So, in the interest of transparency, all the B-roll you're about to see is part of an idea for a challenge run I had, but eventually gave up on for the sake of my time and sanity. Now, heximals be decimals, you might be thinking. How can you sit there and go to bat for holy damage when holy damage literally made you rage quit an entire challenge run? And I'll get to that, but I want to approach this properly. See, this wasn't just a challenge run, but a bit of a science experiment for me. So let's take it back to our middle school science fair and get FIOC in this bit. The Elden Ring community has a bad habit of catastrophizing unoptimization. And I'm not saying that as so I'm above it all or anything. I'm well aware that I launched myself halfway to monetization by talking smack about Mr. McPunchable and his very bad build, which just can have a little self-aggrandizing hypocrisy, as a treat. But I do bring it up because it's always worth keeping on the back of your mind when watching all those tier lists or ranking videos, lest you start thinking that Blasphemous Blade is your only option for victory at all. After all, Elden Ring is designed such that a player can launch themselves at God while naked with a club and come out on top, given enough time, skill, and perseverance. Victory in this game is achieved by building a bridge out of both build and skill, and one can easily carry the faults in another. Any build, hypothetically, can make it to goal. And it was this ethos I had in mind when I asked myself, is Holy really the worst damage type? Because the way people talk about it and rank it and frown on all the holy weapons, you'd think that it was borderline unplayable, and that anyone who wanted to go paladin mode on the game was basically throwing together a meme trash build. So, that was the problem to be addressed. My hypothesis on the matter was simple. That a holy damage build is fine, actually, and that a build doesn't need to dish out 8 bazillion points of damage or whatever for it to serve as a casual player's run-through. No, it's not Rallying Standard, Royal Knight's Resolve, Two-Handed Sword Talisman, Exalted Flesh, Spiked Crystal Tier, Heavy Affinity, Giant Crusher. But it doesn't have to be. I know that dealing a metric fuck-ton of damage to a demigod's face is super fun for a lot of people, but that's not everyone's end goal, right? So, my hypothesis was that holy damage isn't nearly as throttled as people were making it out to be. It just wasn't as bonkers OP as some of the other faith options. Looking at you, Blasphemous. But how to prove this? In order to study holy damage, you have to embrace the holy damage, so that's exactly what I did. I rolled up a prophet build, gave him an appropriately memey name, and set out trying to get as far as I could with only holy damage. No summons, no split damage, just me and whatever holy-only sources of damage I could get my hands on. There weren't many tools in early game that didn't split into physical damage, but luckily what one was there was one I could get without killing a single enemy. The Cipher Pada, a fist weapon found in the Round Table Hold. Since the Faith Not tier was in an easily reachable part of the Weeping Peninsula, it only took 4 levels worth of scavenged runes for me to level my character enough to actually use the weapon. Additionally, the Sacred Scorpion Charm is the easiest of the Scorpion Charms to obtain. No long-winded quest to mollify a creep, no stone sword locked room in a dangerous ruin, just go to a church 5 minutes east of starting spawn and fistfight a cannibal. Yes, the charm knocks the player down a good 10% physical when it comes to negation, but I've been paying the drip tax since I started this game. I know how to balance out low defenses. Additionally, because the Pada weighs literally nothing, I could dedicate my entire weight to armor to balance that out. Though I'll cop to farming for the Clean Rot set solely because it looked cool. Drip above all, y'all. Anyway, the Pada carried me all the way past Godric and Renala to Altus, where I was able to expand upon my build with the Discus of Light, boosted by the Golden Order Seal and the Radiant Gold Mask both found in the area. This ended up being my major damage dealer against most enemies, due to the higher proportional number of boosts for this spell in particular, and the frankly absurdly low FP costs. Like, damn, Miyazaki giving me all that for 3 FP a pop? I mean, I'm not saying no, less mind investment means more stats into damage boosting, but wow. And that, minus a few tweaks here and there as I progressed, is generally how I approached my build from then on. Throughout my time with this build, I've come to realize that the reputation that Holy gets as a bum damage type comes not from the quantity of the struggles, but the placement of those struggles. The first major story boss a new player is likely to encounter is Margit, who has a 40% damage negation from Holy, meaning he's only taking 60% of whatever Holy damage makes it through his base defense. And now, in the grand scheme of things, 40% is not that much. It's not uncommon to pull up a random boss's list and see that they've got 40% negation in all elements and 35% negation in all physical types, with exceptions to damage they're particularly weak or resistant to. 40% is generally a baseline, and by the time you get mid-game power scaling and up, you'll have enough tools in your kit where 40% just isn't going to register to you. However, players hitting Margit for the first time don't have those tools. Your average Margit Slayer is likely to be around levels 20 to 30, with maybe a +3 smithing weapon or a +2 somber. At its baseline requirements of 30 faith, a +2 Cypher Pata only has an attack rating of 163. And yeah, it's a fist weapon, so it's a fast weapon, but that's still pretty small. Using the tarnish.dev damage calculation, a paired L1 with the Cypher Pata against Margit at baseline faith will only deal about 100 damage. The man's got over 4,000 hit points, for reference. Now let's look at the level 85 build and tools I killed Morgott with. The DPS for the coated sword is near double what we had for the Cypher Pata some 50 levels ago, and I also have access to the Discus of Light, which receives the same buffs the coated sword is receiving, and the buffs from the Radiant Gold Mask, and the Golden Order Seal, and the Faithful Canvas Talisman. If this spell damage tool from chirp.tv is still within the realm of the accurate, the Discus is doing a baseline of 280 damage with only the +6 Golden Order Seal taken into account. That's before the Holy Shrouding, before the Sacred Scorpion, before the Radiant Gold Mask, and before Faithful's Canvas. It's not really any wonder that I did better with Morgott than I did with Margit, despite them being the same goddamn guy and having the same goddamn resistances. But on the other end of the bell curve, while there are bosses all over that have 80% resistance to one element or another, very few of them are required battles. The magma worm near Fort Lyde being immune to fire damage isn't an issue for fire builds because it's an optional field boss and you can just run right past it. Renala being near immune to magic doesn't stop a magic build from just finding a great rune somewhere else. The ancient dragons being near immune to lightning magic doesn't have to matter to a lightning build unless you really want their spells, because you never have to fight an ancient dragon to beat the game. But you do have to fight Malakath and Radabis to beat the game, two incredibly difficult, hard-hitting bosses with a whopping 80% holy resistance that can trap cleric and paladin builds in their boss rooms for a long-ass time. Radabist is especially egregious since that boss is a 2-bar battle with the sum total of hit points you have to cleave through being over 35,000. It ends up being kind of the inverse of what I mentioned in regards to leveling Vigor back in my last big video. The longer you can survive being in the boss arena, the more chances you have to kill the boss. But the longer the boss survives being in the arena, the more time they have to kill you. Constantly dying at half health to Radagon while knowing I was only doing 20% of my potential damage got real exhausting real quick, let me tell you. So, the early game poses a real problem for holy builds, and the required endgame poses a real problem for holy builds, yes. The thing is, though, most of Elden Ring takes place between the beginning and the end. Yeah, I know, real fucking revelatory. But the point stands. For the vast majority of the game, holy damage never really felt like it was hobbling me to any vast degree. If I even noticed a damage differential, it was when I was fighting a boss that was particularly weak to holy. I still killed Morgott first try, I still killed Fire Giant on my third, Niall's adds melted like butter to the discus and I nabbed him on my second try. Hell, thanks to Destined Death, I was able to get to half health on Elden Beast once before getting fried by the Stars attack due to being out of flasks and out of horse. I probably could have just completed the damn challenge run if I hadn't gotten bored and frustrated and decided to go play some different games instead. Look, it can't be all Elden Ring all the time. I mean, it can be, but it shouldn't. Maybe it was just my natural experience with the game, or maybe it was that holy damage is just a perfectly suitable tool in the box outside of some very particular edge cases that also happen to be your primary hurdles to winning the game. So, yes, if you do want to try and port your D&D Paladin or Pathfinder Inquisitor into Elden Ring because you think that one holy sword looks fucking sick, it's perfectly doable and you'll have a perfectly fine time with most of the game. Just remember to try and keep a more physically oriented option in your back pocket when it's time to box God. I'm just saying, Michelin Knight Sword can easily be built to favor physical over holy while still having a good holy damage buff in its weapon skill in case you want to smite some undead. And it looks sexy as hell too, just look at those gem inlays.
Isn't that sword in the Halig tree high-end game content?
Yeah, well that's why you do Halig Tree before the DLC, so you have more time with it. Besides, it's always good to give young paladins something to aspire to. Keeps them sharp. In conclusion...
Yes, science!